self-proclaimed his excellency, Justin Sun. Binance gets all the attention these days in regards to the crypto ecosystem, as they should. But Justin Sun, and there's many shell games going on under the surface that just taking a glance at this, you probably wouldn't understand or know that they're all related, and that's intentional, but purposefully. The obfuscation is purposeful. It's intended. It takes a lot of work to take public ledgers and kind of confuse the public about actually what's occurring. So I sent Travis a link if he wants to come up. I see not Tiger Global, not Chase Coleman. We were talking earlier. I don't know if you have an ability to come up or not, or busy, but if you want to come up and talk, let me know. So essentially I posted a tweet today to Justin. It's like, hey, what are the TUSD reserves, and where does the staked USDT yield come from? So for those that don't know, obviously there's Tether out there. That's a big question mark generally as well, because they won't provide CUSIP numbers backing their debt. But you also have, Justin Sun, who owns two bucket shop crypto exchanges, PolyNX and Huobi, now HTX. And there's, you can see out there that he's managing these exchange reserves and pulling all of the Tether and a lot of the crypto assets off himself. And with that, he's taking all the Tether, he's putting it into a thing called staked USDT. Well, here's Travis. I invite you up to speak, Trav. But there's a whole lot here. I'm kind of all over the place right now, but there's just layers and layers of absolute madness to get into. Oh, sweet. I'm not Chase Coleman, my favorite conspiracy theorist TM on crypto Twitter. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. I'm actually en route to see some family, but I will be listening until then. And if I want to chime in, I will chime in. All right.
Sweet. Yeah, no pressure at all. Hey, Trav.
Hey, guys. The slow train wreck continues.
All right. So I say we, and Trav, you're everybody's favorite person to rag on about the whole, Binance FUD, people will say, well, Trav, you're just salty about FTX and, you're just projecting and it's cope and, et cetera, et cetera. The ironic thing is that not one for one, but a lot of the warning signs are literally just happening in repeat, actually to a much an order of magnitude larger, which is the crazy thing about it, is that there's seemingly no pattern recognition out there from a lot of these entities. So let's zoom out a bit, actually. Why are we talking about stable coins and, Justin Sun, CZ, and who cares? Well, one, I care because I'm, very much interested in the Bitcoin experiment and how it goes and how it plays out. And I'm interested in seeing how the market trades. And the reality is, a lot of these actors, including Sam Beckman-Fried before, have a pretty big impact on the exchange rate, right? So FTX collapses, crackdown on Signature, on Silvergate. Yeah, they had bond losses, but they got taken out, essentially. BUSD winds down. There's not really any fiat off-ramps in crypto, right? It's essentially only, US institutions or the Coinbases of the world that have fiat rails and Circle. So there's really not any international fiat rails. Tether's a black box. We don't know their banks. They're coming out and saying there's rumors of them partnering with tiny banks in the Cayman Islands. But why is an $80 billion stablecoin, going with a bank that has, only a couple $100 million in assets in 2020 or 2021, right? There's questions there. But we see this kind of bifurcation between Tether and a few more kind of random stablecoins that arise out of nowhere. A lot of them, Justin Sun or CZ, kind of trying to back and spur these new things, these new stables up, while USDC gets drained. And not Tiger Global here kind of came up with a pretty interesting theory of, well, if you had no fiat rails and you had no way to get fiat, and you were either a stablecoin issuer or kind of in the in group, what would you do? And kind of extrapolating, pulling on that thread brings you to some interesting places. What are your thoughts on that?
Give me a few minutes.
Yeah, on the Tether thing, Justin Sun is undoubtedly using Huobi as a piggy bank. I give you 5-to-1 odds.
No, I think it's 1-to-1. We see it happening. It's literally happening as we speak.
Yeah.
Do you think he's shorting Tether? Because think about it. I'm trying to wrap my head around that staked USDT thing. So for those that don't know, we create staked USDT is marketed as this real world assets, right? Of crypto off chain, on chain. We're gonna pass the yield back to you. That's the pitch. One, show me the banking relationships. They don't have them. But two, okay, we're gonna take Huobi customer money. Their Tether. We're gonna pummel it into this staked quote unquote staked USDT, and then now all of a sudden we have this magical new token that rebases with 5% interest, quote unquote, and he sent it back to Huobi, HTX, kind of hilarious, ironic, and the customers think that they have Tether, which they think is money good, and in reality it's staked USDT, and there's a fake ecosystem around this stablecoin thing that Tether just today came out and was no, we have nothing to do with this. Right, it's people thought it was an affiliation. It's not. They're obviously using Tether, but Justin Sun replies to my tweet today, pinned to the nest, and he's yeah, the yield comes from treasuries. And it's like, no, it obviously doesn't, because like how the hell would Justin Sun be paying, providing yield, treasury yields on stable coins? Like, show me the bank. That's obviously wrong. So like, is Justin Sun just short? Is he just creating a vehicle to short Tether? I mean, he's shorting his customers' Tether, but he's essentially selling it on the market for whatever, and then coming back, having an IOU token and saying, oh, here's yield, and like, there's no yield. It's just like he's printing fake tokens, in my opinion. Do you have thoughts there?
I wish I did. No, specifically on STUSDT thing, I really don't. I haven't gone down that particular rabbit hole deep enough to understand, like, specifically kind of what type of scam he's basically running with that. Because I've just been operating under the assumption, Huobi has lost tremendous market share. It's like it used to be a big exchange. It used to be, a central part of price discovery in like 2020 and parts of 2021, and then it's really just kind of faded into oblivion. And I don't know, like, for example, not that I even think that DeFi Llama's numbers are right for exchange reserves, because I really don't think they're right, but they have Huobi at $2.5 billion of assets, which is pretty small, if that number's even right. So I'm not sure how, it's like, who's left on Huobi? It's like, it's probably just like Justin Sun's cronies, and it's probably all gray and black market money anyways, that like, they're just, it's probably just one big washing machine basically trying to get whatever assets you can kind of laundered through this thing, and out the other side you can go do something with them. But
I mean, that's what we saw today, right? Like, one of the reasons I tweeted it out is today, $500 million of TUSD prints in a bunch of, quote unquote, different prints, sends to Huobi, comes back out the other side. TUSD now goes into the staked USDT contracts. He backs this, quote unquote, backs the staked USDT with this, sends it to the scam version of Aave on Tron, Just Lend DAO, right? With $1 billion of staked USDT. So again, this fake printed TUSD, or maybe it's backed, show me. He turns it into staked USDT, the TUSD, backs it, creates his new token, puts it in his DeFi protocol, which, by the way, if you look at it, quote unquote DeFi, right? It's on Tron 1, 2, it's all his liquidity. But if you look at this quote unquote DeFi lending and borrowing app, there's Tether, and there's wrapped staked Tether and Tron and all this garbage, TUSD, and then there's like $5 million supplied of USDC. It's like, oh, the only thing that's actually able to get liquid cash, there's none of left in this thing. And meanwhile, there's $1 billion of all these other garbage tokens.
Yeah.
And then
I mean,
on the other side, he burns the TUSD.
The kind of last gasps of a dying man here. This just may be right near the end of the line for him, and something may be coming to light here about what's going on with TUSD, what's going on with Huobi. You would certainly think, out of all the players, out of everything that's going on with Binance, and to the extent you think Tether's wrapped up in that, and trying to scenario out how that might go down with Tether and or Binance. I mean, Justin Sun, he's the weakest out of the three of them. So to the extent that they're all kind of in this like some sort of like pseudo, Mexican standoff kind of thing, he certainly seems like he would be like the weakest of the three out of them, which maybe means that his situation kind of topples first.
Yeah. No, I mean, we talk about Huobi not because it's like, the next FTX, or like, it's systemic. I mean, it's far from it. I think that the thing that I take away from, just the last couple of years of crypto, and, like seeing these various entities that have all these different shell corps or different, quote unquote entities that are all intertwined, it's like, what are red flags? Like, well, a bunch of different entities to kind of obfuscate your trail, pegged tokens, pegged assets, right? So like Sun has PolyNX, he has Huobi, he has like 4 different quote unquote stable coins, right? He has all these wrapped assets. Like there's like 100K WBTC on Tron, and it's like, where's the backing? It's like, oh yeah, well, I mean, no one knows. And like no blockchain explorers know. It's just like, and so to me, it's like, okay, well, never mind like Justin in particular, but the premise of like the whole crypto contagion thing was like, oh, there's a whole bunch of like dead bodies or like debt out there that's like, it's hidden, right? There's just a bunch of like, clipped balance sheets that are all damaged, and no one's kind of just like willing to admit it. And so they're just all hiding it. And so it's like, Sun has like, this empire of stable coins and Tron and all this like BS. And, you see millions of dollars getting burned and minted and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, is this guy even solvent? And in my opinion, no, he's not. It's just like all Fugazi. Yes. But like, I guess, regardless of Justin Sun, who, I highly suspect to, be lying when he says, it's backed by treasuries. Zooming out a bit, the kind of the pressure seems to be ramping on Binance. The most interesting, fascinating thing about all of it is because they're kind of the last one standing here. Not the last one, but from the crypto casinos, right? They're the only game in town for something with quote unquote liquidity. I mean, obviously a bunch of it's wash trading, and there's not actually as much liquidity as you would like to see when you log on to CoinMarketCap. and owned by Binance and look at these reported volumes. But rumors of DOJ, SEC basically came back and was like, you submitted us screenshots of bank balances and provided us with no evidence. Like, what are you guys doing? How are you kind of thinking about it all? Because we were, saying last January, like, hey, exec's leaving. This inflated nothing token is worth 30, 40 billion. They're CZ's just like scrambling to chuck together a BS proof of reserves. Doesn't show liabilities. It means nothing. It's called an audit. It was an attestation. Like all these stuff where it's like, why are you trying to project yourself as like being so strong when it's obviously like a straw man? So like, how do you do it right now?
I mean, I keep referring to it as the slow train wreck because it has been, in some ways, that's been the most, like the fact that Binance is still standing has been, like in some ways, that's kind of like the most surprising thing. And I think Binance supporters would point to that and say that's different than FTX, where FTX, basically you got a balance sheet that leaked in a CoinDesk article on a Wednesday. The thing ramps up from Wednesday through Sunday, and then you can't get your money out Monday. And then this thing has been like grinding now for 10 months, really. I mean, it was the first part of December where you kind of really started raising some antennas. Bill, and I think you and I were probably sharing messages even back then on the BUSD thing, on that Binance pegged BUSD. And that was the first time that I wrote a tweet thread specifically speaking out against Binance because it just looked like there were so many similarities to the FTX situation. I didn't want people to get hurt in the same way that I just gotten hurt so bad in this FTX situation. And then month after month, right, since then, going on 10 months now, the situation just continues to devolve. And you got a CFTC complaint in March. Everybody, you read the complaint. I talked to some guys, that are, quite plugged into kind of crypto legal type of stuff. I talked to some of these guys, they read the CFTC complaint and they're like, oh, DOJ is coming. It should be coming in the next week or two. It should be coming right now. Because you could read the CFTC complaint back in March and there's all kinds of criminal shit in there. We're not talking about fucking commodities violations like crime, bank, and terrorist financing, like, Bank Secrecy Act violation, OFAC stuff, like bad stuff that the United States government takes, just takes dead serious. And then it doesn't happen. And then more bad stuff happens and, people start leaving and this, that, and the other. And then you have the SEC complaint in June, and it's even worse than the CFTC complaint. And then it's like, surely this is the DOJ is just coming at any moment. Then you have a bunch of senior executives leave, and then they're getting kicked out. They get kicked out of Canada, they get kicked out of Germany, they get kicked out of Belgium, they get kicked out of Netherlands. They're under, they're trying to claim France as their like Europe, as Binance's like European headquarters, and they're under investigation for aggravated money laundering in France. Like it just month after month, this thing just keeps getting worse, and everybody's sitting there wondering, where's this DOJ case? Because it seems like they have them dead to rights on this thing. And there's questions around jurisdiction for the DOJ. Like, does the DOJ have jurisdiction to go after Binance? And I think you can make a pretty clear you can make a pretty clear argument that they would have jurisdiction for two reasons. One, we now know that Binance US was a complete front, a fake for Binance.com, and all of the liquidity, all of the assets. There was no it was just all commingled on the back end, right? So then that draws a clear line for DOJ to have jurisdiction, and then we now know through the CFTC and SEC complaints that Binance.com was being, doing all kinds of things to make sure that big American clients could continue to trade on Binance.com. They had the whole Tai Chi document. There's a lot of evidence that they were doing this, which also draws jurisdiction. So jurisdiction is probably okay on DOJ, but then there's the question of enforceability. Like, how would DOJ actually go about like enforcing criminal charges on Changpeng and on Binance as an entity and other key executives? And it's like, okay, Binance exists on AWS. Which servers? How many redundant servers? Changpeng sits in UAE. UAE does not have automatic extradition to the United States. They have case-by-case extradition to the United States. And they will extradite, like, some guy that's got a bunch of child porn or, 2 tons of cocaine or something like that. They'll extradite somebody like that. But Changpeng, this has a lot of geopolitical ramifications because there's a lot of Russian and Chinese gray and black market money that are on Binance.com, a lot, billions of dollars. So this is, some pretty serious geopolitical ramifications around this. So it's just not that clear that even if the DOJ felt really good about jurisdictional type of stuff, just the actual enforceability of criminal charges, it's just less clear about how exactly that would work. So I think my base case over the last maybe month or so, and it's kind of like a low conviction based case. Like, I wouldn't give you like 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 odds that I think this is going to happen, but I think my base case now is I think that Tether is going to deplatform Binance, in the next 6 months or so. And I think that that's going to happen because the U.S. government is going to pressure Tether to do that. And Tether holds their treasuries at Cantor Fitzgerald, and they've got a couple bullshit banks in Caribbean, but Chase is the correspondent banks that's the actual dollar access bank for these little shitty banks in the Caribbean. And so that's where they get their dollars, and that's where they hold their treasuries. And the United States has U.S. regulators have a very long history of using banking rails to enforce things that otherwise might kind of be hard to get done. And they would just, like the Department of Justice, in my opinion, has had Tether completely by the balls for years. I think there's people that would argue with me about that, but people in this chat, and we can talk about it. I'll finish my monologue here in a second. We can talk about it, but I think DOJ has had Tether by the balls for a long time. Tether's frozen over 1,000 addresses over the last couple of years. If the DOJ wants Tether to freeze an address, they just go to Tether and they go freeze the address, and Tether freezes the address. And I think they would go to Tether and they would say, Tether, there's been, terrorists are using Tether for terrorism financing, and we're going to shut your business down unless you deplatform Binance.com. And I think Tether would agree to deplatform Binance.com. And for those of us in this chat that have been paying close attention to this for the last however many months, you can see a souring of the relationship between Tether and Binance. Like there are little hints that has been the case, and I think that's kind of part of what we're seeing. And so I think you'll end up seeing something that would look like an announcement from both Tether and Binance that there's a 90-day window, and you got 90 days to get all your Tether off of Binance.com, and whatever Tether is left over on Binance.com automatically gets converted into TUSD and FDUSD, this new bullshit stablecoin that they're using. And so then you kind of game plan or like scenario out, like if that happens, then what happens basically? Well, you probably have a big run on, you should see very real withdrawals from Binance.com, but it's not that clear which assets would be chosen to be withdrawn, because if you're gray black market money sitting in $1 billion worth of Tether in Binance.com, you may not want to withdraw Tether because Tether can get frozen. And U.S. regulators, may be using this approach. Like it's kind of like, you're in like an old house and you like flip the lights on in the kitchen and all the cockroaches scatter. You know what I mean? So it's like you do this deplatforming thing, and then you scatter a bunch of funds off of Binance.com. And the U.S. government has very good chain analysis around the money, like all assets basically going into and out of Binance.com. They can freeze Tether. Obviously, they can't freeze Bitcoin. They can't freeze Ethereum. They can freeze stables, or at least Tether and USDC. So then it's like, well, maybe people would end up, gray and black market money would end up, withdrawing Bitcoin and ETH instead of Tether, because they would kind of just feel better about that overall, counterparty risk, basically. In which case you may not have that much of a downward pressure on, Bitcoin price in a scenario like that, if that's kind of the asset that people decide that they want to pull off the exchange or something like that goes down. So I'll pause there. I don't know if anybody else has been thinking about that, but that's kind of my low conviction base case for right now.
Yeah, a lot of good thoughts there. Not Tiger Global. I don't even know what to call you, man, but give your hand up. You want to chime in?
Do you guys hear me, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm in the car with my obnoxious family, so if you can hear them, I'm sorry. But we're on our way to Rosh Hashanah dinner. But yeah, Travis kind of stole my thunder. All the above. And he's right about everything. But I want to stress something, because I see this on Twitter a lot. There's a lot of misinformed people. There is absolutely no difference between Binance and Binance US. There is absolutely zero difference between Binance and Binance US. I'll say that again. It was the same arrangement that FTX US had. It was a distraction to the regulators from what was really going on. Binance US is a US banking on-ramp for CZ's personal funds, for corporate funds, for customer funds. It is 99% wash trading on there. Merit Peak and Sigma Chain are the primary market makers / hedge funds of wash trade, along with another 298 that we know of. And Travis mentioned stuff about AWS. I actually had this theory a while back that, if the government wanted to pull a nuclear option, there is this, AWS has very strict privacy protocols for their clients, but there are scenarios in which they would abide by an order from the DOJ if the customer is either, very specifically, the one reason they would freeze servers or take over the domain. And if you take over the domain, then it doesn't matter if you have other servers from like Azure or GCP, but that would be the nuclear option, to freeze the AWS servers and take over the domain name. And the CFTC complaint and the lawsuit actually highlight AWS several times, which is why that got me thinking. So I think it's going to be a really, I mean, my base case is nuclear. There is no like base case. It's just Binance is going to implode and BNB is going to zero. And I think that everybody here and everybody on crypto Twitter needs to be very, very, very realistic about the impact that this would have on the market, on the ecosystems. And stay solvent, guys. And you know, another thing I'll say is that if Tether makes it out of this, which is I think is kind of debatable, because Tether provides the chips and Binance is the biggest casino, and I think customers have 15 billion in USDT on the platform or something like that. And the problem is like if customers try to pull out and they want to redeem for dollars, there's no shot in fucking hell that they're going to be able to redeem all that. There's no shot, and there's a reason why they started FDUSD and they started pumping TUSDs, because when you're taking out money, right? Let's say there's a lot of withdrawals that are being requested, and you have USDT is not being actually redeemed. It's you're getting back the dollars, if you're able to, but that money is not coming from Tether. It's coming from another Ponzi, which is FDUSD and TUSD. So it's not a great scenario, but if Tether makes it out, right? And I'm very objective. I might tweet a lot of, very bearish stuff, but I'm actually very objective. And here is my objective view. Okay. If Tether makes it out of this unscathed, okay, there is always the Tether put on the market. Always, 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 always. So just like there is the Fed put on equity markets, there's always a Tether put. And the Tether put is they're going to send money to Bitfinex and they're going to prop up the market. That is exactly what they're going to do. And yeah, they are the glue for everything. But yeah, I think that the main thing to take away from what's been going on is it's ironic how reliant these guys are on US dollars. And the trigger for that was SEN, owned by Silvergate, and Signet, which was run by Signature, going under. That basically handicapped all the offshore guys from fiat completely. And they had to resort to taking USDT or TUSD and buying coins with it, selling incrementally into USDC and then redeeming, which would explain the market cap implosion of USDC this year. And if you actually do the math checks out, right? If you look at the market cap increase of Tether plus the market cap increase of TUSD starting on June 15th, and you take the market cap decrease of USDC, it is 1-to-1. Minus.
Yeah, I mean that could be the BUSD redemption too, though, because
Possibly.
they're very comparable.
Possibly.
Yeah.
But I just think the math there is very spooky. It's like to the dollar almost. Minus 18.56 billion plus 18.56 billion. So yeah. But I'm on Travis's team here. We have the same view about everything. I might be even a little bit more doomsday about Binance than he is, but generally we have the same view that they are completely and utterly screwed. And I've been a broken record, so I don't want to keep repeating myself. But you guys get the picture.
Yeah, and I appreciate the thoughts. Like the interesting thing to me is that all these signs have been here for a while, but it really crystallized post FTX, like literally November, December. It was like, okay, the precedent is obvious. Sam just got he just got thrown in prison for money laundering, securities fraud. Like you go down the list, right? And you're like, well, who did Sam model this whole business off of? Like, obviously, he literally copy and pasted Binance and the token. Like if you look at FTT and BNB at the same time, they both start going parabolic, outperforming Bitcoin in the cycle. And you can say like, oh yeah, well that's just based on Bitcoin. But it's obvious that every exchange that has failed in this ecosystem has relied on this like flywheel crypto token effect to bolster their exchange, whether it's to hype up market to new users or offer some form of like yield reward or use it as collateral. And so like the fact that Binance is it's the only game in town for crypto derivative liquidity essentially right now. The fact that like BNB outperformed Bitcoin all bear market and every other altcoin got decimated against Bitcoin because it's just beta, right? In tandem with the fact that they're rehypothecating billions of dollars of pegged tokens, billions of dollars of BUSD, USDT, and ETH are just like in these pegged tokens to Binance Smart Chain are just being rehypothecated. It's like, well, I mean, would a business that's churning billions of dollars of revenue or profit resort to this? Right? Like maybe it's just flat out incompetence, I guess you could say. But why would they do that? Why would a business printing money do that? Like it was obvious to me that before the SEC and before the CFTC even filed any suits, it was like, yeah, I mean, obviously they're wash trading. Like, duh. Like, why else would they have zero fee trading on some of this stuff? Right? It's like it's obvious that no one's making a market for like shitcoin XYZ in the BNB pair. Right? Like it's obvious, duh. And so to me, the notion, like this is kind of a little bit as a side point, but the notion that like Binance, despite all the FUD and this and that, like they're a very profitable business. It's like, well, everyone thought that about Sam and FTX. Like they're the smartest guys in the room, they're super profitable. And but the thing is, Trav, like just one more point, and I'll hand it over to you, is like, well, maybe it's not as profitable as everybody thinks to fake 500 spot and perpetual markets at the same time, and quote unquote not make any profits. Like CZ goes on a space and he's like, before the suits, before the lawsuits from the CFTC and SEC, and he's like, yeah, we have two market makers, or we have an unaffiliated market maker, but they don't make any profit. And it's like, wait, what? Like he said it in a way that like he was speaking like altruistically. He's like, yeah, don't worry, we don't make profit. And it's like, if you're a market maker, then and you're not making profit, then what the hell are you doing? Right? You're just like not making any money. And so, like in my opinion, these guys, Well, one, they're in the business of pumping a completely worthless token to a $100 billion valuation in 2021 with no fundamental buyers. Two, they incentivize their users to borrow against it. They pay their employees in it. They have a whole entire derivative casino with a black box that you don't know how many people are borrowing and lending against anything. There's like, there's collateralized borrow and lend, just like there's at FTX, as well as, it's in insurance funds. There's coin margin collateral, all this other stuff. It's like, if you just net it all out right now, and I'm very sure that, they don't have all this stuff very, very nicely organized one-to-one assets to liabilities, on-chain assets versus like customers, what they're owed. How important is the BNB notional market cap or price relative to their notional solvency? And like, if you think it's zero, then like I disagree with you. And that's been kind of my trope is like you have a $30 billion token. It's like the fucking equivalent of Square or Block. And obviously it's a fake market, duh. But like, who's the only buyer of this thing? It's obviously CZ. Like, there's no other real buyer of BNB. So like, how integral is this? And no one knows. And that's my entire point is like, literally every single exchange that went down in 2022, except like BlockFi, had their own fucking token. They were levered against it. Even Genesis, right, was levered to the hilt against their own fucking GBTC, right? And so it's like, CZ, you have any like uncollateralized loans? Because like you wouldn't even let $300 million of BNB hit the market in a DeFi liquidation. Like you have manually took over a $300 million collateral position that was going to get liquidated at $200 for a $30 billion asset. Like, does that not like sound any red flags? Like, am I just like fucking crazy here?
No, big time. Completely agree with that. Yeah. I mean, we as an ecosystem, you look back at the last 18 months and this notion of, oh, XYZ isn't committing fraud because they're really profitable. You got to fucking let that shit go. Like, that's not the way the facts have borne out. That people will have very profitable businesses and will still do really fraudulent stuff. Like so to look at Binance, look at Changpeng's business and say, oh, it's too profitable, he would never, use customer assets or this, that, and the other I think that's completely ridiculous. Like I'm not even willing to entertain that argument at this point. And if you're somebody that's like still holding on to that, I don't really have anything to say to you. Like if that's, it's not an argument that holds water any longer. And with BNB, I completely think that, I mean, anybody that's an active trader of anything, I don't care what you trade actively, you trade cotton futures for all I care. Anybody that is an active trader can look at the price action of BNB and know that it's extremely unnatural. It's a very unnatural price action. It trades like somebody is propping it up. And like, who in the world else would be propping it up other than Changpeng? And people are like, oh, he's got so much money. Oh, it's fine. I think your point about the Venus liquidation that's a really good point. If he had all that money, why would he be treating this Venus liquidation like that? And another thing around, how much kind of liquid asset, what Changpeng's sort of personal balance sheet looks like. And I think that his personal balance sheet and Binance.com's balance sheet are completely intertwined. I mean, anybody that has been, it's like anybody that tries to argue that the assets are not massively commingled on the back end, they have not been reading the legal complaints. Because you cannot read the SEC and CFTC filings that have come out and think that it's anything other than one big fucking slush pool on the back end. There's just a pile of evidence, and it's just, and you brought this up earlier, Dylan. Some of the stuff that's just been coming out in the last couple of days on this Binance US, they can't even get them a fucking monthly printout. It's like they can't even. It's like they don't even have a QuickBooks printout of what Binance US's assets are. They hardly have any assets over there, anyways. It should be really easy to just put together. You had some financial statements. Just hit Control P on a Microsoft Excel or something. They don't have any of it. No. It's one big slush pool on the back end. And one thing I'll say on the BNB kind of price action and Changpeng's this massive pile of wealth that his supporters, purport him to have. One exercise that I did is take the dollar volume of BNB token starting December of last year through current, and you just pull it off of CoinGecko or whatever, and look at that aggregate number of dollars that have been traded since then, and then make some assumption about wash trading. X% of this was wash traded, and then make another assumption on how much of the remaining volume might CZ be catching. Like, might he be the bid on this volume? Somebody's got to be, for every ask, there's a bid, right? Somebody's selling it and somebody's buying it, right? And some amount of that is wash trading. You make an assumption on the wash trading, and then you make an assumption on, okay, well, how much of the rest of it might CZ just be, buying, catching all of this self flow. To your point about who the fuck else would be buying BNB over this 10 months of shitstorm that's been going on for this company, right? And I did that exercise, and I assumed 25% wash trading, and then I assumed that CZ was only buying 10% of the remaining value. And if all of the BNB flow since December 1st, if 25% of it was wash traded and CZ just only bought 10% of the leftover, that's $14 billion worth of BNB. That's a real number. I get it. He's a rich guy, but $14 billion is a lot of money for anybody. A lot of money. And so it's like this idea that, like, he just has this infinite stack of cash.
I mean, look at my pinned tweet. Like, I mean, and obviously he could be lying there, but it's like, even that tweet itself is almost an admission of like, one, okay, you're lying. I fucking hope it's not 99% BNB. But like the second point, and this is less like quantifiable, less like on-chain evidence type, and more of just like, and I've posted this in a couple different spaces and podcasts or whatever. But it's like, Trav, like, you spin up Travis coin in 2017 and $0 and you have a business and whatever, and it starts in good merit. And 4 years from now, the coin that you incentivize people to use and create and borrow and trade with and fee rewards and all this, it's worth $100 billion and you have 50% of it. And like, you can't sell any of it because you're the one that's been buying it and pumping the price. And maybe you pump the price with customer funds, maybe you pump the price on your own futures platform. Like, it's not all that expensive. You have a futures market, you have a borrow and lend market. You pump 100 million of BUSD, 10x leverage. Like, it shoots this illiquid pile of shit up to $100 billion or whatever the math is. I just threw out some random figures there. But all of a sudden, right, like, the trap is, well, there's no fucking buyers. You can't sell any of it. So like, well, how do you capitalize? And I like, in the same way that, Sam, this JP Morgan of crypto, like, that was literally the perception a week before shit hit the fan. This Titan that had his executives, CIO of Alameda leave, a month before to go boating, right? Like, we know the Binance executives all jumping ship. Well, as it turns out, like, their entire treasury, their entire balance sheet was a pile of liquid dog shit, and they were levered against it. So it's like, the notion that CZ goes on Twitter and he's like, oh, here are our assets. Someone's like, hey, what are your liabilities? And he's like, we don't have any. Ask around. And it's like, well, in notional terms, you have fucking $50 billion or $100 billion of derivative liabilities. Like, how much open interest is there on Binance? We don't even have the figures for the collateralized lending stuff. And guess what? Binance subsidizes borrow costs on BNB. So it's like, you're supporting this quasi monetary asset. But the problem is, it's not a monetary asset because, say what you want about Bitcoin, the whole tether thing, yada, yada, whatever. But there are fucking psychopaths that buy Bitcoin every day around the planet, right? So like, even if it's not a lot, like, be bearish on Bitcoin, say it's this, that, and the other thing, whatever, I don't care. But there's still buyers. There's still people exchanging fiat for Bitcoin everywhere on the planet, every hour of the day, every day. There's not that with BNB. And so it's like, there's no weak balance sheet, all of this, we know. But you had something worth $100 billion at the top. And then from there, against Bitcoin, it outperformed everything. It literally outperformed everything in crypto. November 2022, it's at all-time highs in Bitcoin terms. Every altcoin got decimated, and it's like, who's on the bid? So like, that was the biggest red flag for me by far, was like, wait, what the heck? And now he's stuck with no fiat rails, defending it for whatever reason. It's like, again, like the Venus thing, they got hacked. They got they got out with $1 million of BNB, $300 million. They borrow $200 million of stable, swap it to a bunch of chains, get it into Bitcoin and ETH. So now there's $200 million of bad debt on some BNB quote unquote DeFi chain. Never mind the fact that BNB can get hacked. I'm sorry, not get hacked, get frozen rather. It was a bridge that got hacked or exploited. And they shut down the whole chain, which is just like hilarious. But right, like, if you're bullish on an asset, like the biggest tell for me with Caroline, when a tweet of like, oh, I'll buy it all at $22. Talk to a Bitcoiner on Twitter. They're like, nuke the market, like, we'll buy it all at $10, fuck you, like, we don't care, stack sats. Like, CZ, if you're so bullish on BNB, like, buy it all at 50, right? Like, why are you interested in buying this thing at $200? Like, it's a red flag that you have to go in and manually support a market. You have to overtake it, and he's paying this thing down $10 million at a time. Like, cash rich CZ, billionaire Titan, pay it all down, man. Like, so yeah, Binance has 50 billion on its platform. Like, great, 30 billion of it's BNB. But like, it's just, to me, there's so many obvious signs of like, there's massive asset liability mismatch. I knew before the SEC and CFTC docs that they were commingling funds. Anybody that could do basic on-chain analysis could say the same, right? Like, you just see they run out of tether, all of a sudden funds start flowing from Binance hot wallets to Binance US. It's like, oh, well, the commingling funds, duh. It's like, oh, yep, SEC comes out, they're like, yeah, they used Signet and Signature and Silvergate to pump their stablecoin with customer funds from Binance US. And then they rehypothecated it, so it got shut down. And so it's like, they've ran out of cash, they have no cash left. They have a $30 billion fraud token that somehow has no effect on the core business that he's supporting. And all the executives are jumping. And so, like, regardless of DOJ, I'm not here to be like, clamp down, we need regulation. Like, I don't care. But everybody on crypto Twitter, it's like, it's hilarious to me. On one hand, they're like, FUD, CZ is the man. And on the other hand, they're like, fuck you, Gary Gensler, why don't we get an ETF? And it's like, like, maybe we put two and two together here, guys, and realize that, 80% of this market is fraud. Like, it's a fraud market. So we can realize that as a Bitcoiner and say, fucking burn it down. Or we can sit here and be like, no, this will be bad for the quote unquote crypto ecosystem. Like, you can't have it both ways.
Yeah. One thing on these kind of reserve numbers too. Maybe I can't pin a tweet in here. I don't know how it works, but if you go to my page, it's the most recent tweet I had. These data service providers that are putting out these reserve numbers for exchanges, I don't really have very high degree of confidence in these numbers, but really for any of the exchanges. And what Binance.com purports to have, you can't have any trust in that. I mean, like zero reason to believe that that's an accurate representation of the assets they have on hand. But these data providers, whatever, Chainalysis, Arkham, DeFi Llama, CryptoQuant, like, these different data service providers will put out these numbers, but they don't agree. They're not in agreement with each other, and they're not even close. And I just use Binance US as an example because, this thing is, this is a dead man walking, right? I mean, it has been for a while and it kind of came to fruition this week. But just on Binance US, CoinGecko is showing 320 million of reserves. Arkham was showing 550 million of reserves, and Chainalysis is showing 100 million. This is a tiny exchange, and there's an enormous disparity amongst these three data service providers. Chainalysis is supposed to be the marquee name, right? Why is there such a big disparity about how many assets are in the wallets of Binance US?
And then it's all Binance.
Dude, well, then you look at Binance and you're just like, how can you have any degree of confidence that we know exactly like what wallets are controlled, that contain customer deposits? And I just don't buy it. And it's my base case that as this slow train wreck continues, we get further down this path. Now, one of the things that's going to come to light is that, you go to DeFi Llama right now and they say Binance got whatever, 50 billion. Bullshit. They do not have $50 billion of customer assets. They don't have control over the wallets that DeFi Llama thinks they have control over. It's not an accurate representation of the customer assets that they hold. And I'm highly confident that that's going to come out. So maybe it's going to take days, weeks, months, whatever, but that's going to come out.
So here's a fun one. And I just pinged this, or posted this to the top of the nest. And I think originally this was just like an interaction I had a week ago, but I think originally this was a reply interaction that I had with you, Trav. But the first tweet is
oh yeah, this is a good one. This is a
real 4 days post FTX collapse. CZ tweets: if an exchange has to move large amounts of crypto before or after they demonstrate their wallet addresses, it's a clear sign of problem. Stay away. #stay safe. And so then CZ tweets out, as if CZ is like, not the guy that's moving these funds and signing off on all these addresses, as if he has some man that, that reports to CZ and tells him, hey, I moved all this crypto. But he tweets out, the quarterly BNB burn is done. I was told there'll be some more on-chain large transactions shortly to further distribute spread coins to more addresses. Why? Nothing to be alarmed about,
dude. Oh my god!
And then after this, you have in 5 different clips, 1.6 billion, 1.4 billion, 1.3 billion, 900 million, and 1.9 billion dollars of BNB moved to various addresses, right? And now these are labeled Binance addresses, right? But like if you think like literally, he's just playing that same playbook over again. So like where do these coins go? Who like I have no idea. Maybe posted as collateral or an OTC deal or whatever. Like I have no idea. But like all the things that if you just think about like what Sam did, public projection of strength, industry bailouts, right? Like the industry bailout fund, $1 billion of BUSD, great. It came from customer funds, and then they backtracked because people just looked at Etherscan and were like, hey, why did you just send $1 billion of BUSD to the industry reserve from Binance 8? And they put out a blog post and they're like, oh, our security's so good, it's our own corporate funds. And then people were like, wait, wasn't the point of like the whole reserve attestation to like say that these were your customer assets and that like this was like how much you were securing for them? So like corporate funds are in there too. And so it's like there's just this history of like obvious lies. The lies get uncovered. They backtrack. They scramble. CZ puts out like just a stupid tweet with a prayer emoji, and people are like, "Oh, thanks, CZ, we love you." Like so true. It's like, dude, like there's a market, and I guess the meaningful thing is they pumped this. 1 second, sorry. Thank you. Appreciate it. They pumped this thing in 2020, 2021 with no volume anywhere else on the planet, only Binance, right? So like Trav, it's really easy to pump Trav token to a $100 billion valuation when there's not a single other marketplace on the planet where it trades.
When it's on Trav Exchange.
Yeah, it's pretty damn easy. And so like, no, is there a a CZ moment now where similar to FTT where someone's unloading like $1 billion of BNB spot? No, there's not. But the reality is that now there's a perp market on BitMEX. There's one with meaningful liquidity on Bybit. It's about like 33, 35, 40% of open interest on BNB.
Yeah, I've been watching that Bybit BNB open interest, which I think is pretty.
It's not on Binance.
That's definitely worth watching.
And guess what? If you look at the exchange rate of BNB perps, Bybit versus Binance, it's been consistently 30 basis points higher for the last month. So like, is 30 basis points a lot? No. But like, oh, where's the buy flow? Where's the support coming? Well, I mean, it doesn't take an intellectual to fucking realize it's Binance, but yeah, the data confirms it. So, CZ has to, there's like, who are the natural sellers of BNB? Well, anybody dumb enough to like hold it now. But like the real thing, and this is the thing that people don't understand about the FTT thing, it wasn't just CZ selling that Sam had to absorb. There was a whole bunch of degenerate speculators that piled in on the short leg as the thing was unwinding. So it's like, yeah, CZ, you have to defend against spot, but you also forever, for the rest of time, as long as you're faking this market, have to defend against people shorting it on leverage, on crypto casinos. And so, and like here was another thing, and there's no meaningful volume, there's no open interest at the moment, but it was kind of like a shot, right? Was you mentioned how Tether and Binance are fraying a bit, not really like publicly, but kind of like little jabs on Twitter here and there, right? Why did Bitfinex, who's been in business for 6 years, why did they just list the third largest token in crypto on the perps? Yeah. They just did, right? So there's no open interest. But Bitfinex,
I've been looking at the open interest because when you see that thing, if that thing starts juicing, it's all over, baby.
It's over,
gonna be, that's right. Yeah.
Well, because like think about it, right? Binance pumped BNB with like you can look at the open interest. BNB collateralized open interest was skyrocketing when BNB was like $7, $10, $20, $50. I've looked at all this shit. It's all in Coinalyze, right? But going back to 2020, there wasn't even a market then. Someone, Binance, was going in, margining BNB with BNB, and just going long as hell and pumped the thing, 50x in a couple months straight line. No pullbacks. Now, right, there's more and more markets. It's increasingly USD collateralized, not coin margin on Binance. And now Tether, who just after CZ like kind of jabs Tether and says like, hey, we want more stables. Tether's a black box, yada yada, right? Bitfinex launches BNB perps as like a hey, watch out because and for those that don't know, Tether and Bitfinex are one and the same. Because if you fuck with us, if you like watch your step, because if so, like we have literally an unlimited amount of USDT as collateral to short this thing. Like we have our own casino too. And that was what people missed with like FTT was like, yeah, if FTT was only traded on FTX, Sam could have kept this game going forever, because he would just take the exchange rate. And that's what he did at first. But then when you look at the speculators that ramped up on Binance at the end, you can't defend against that. You can't defend against the fraud if it's not on your turf. So like if and I've looked for US borrow, there's none. I mean you can like trade it on like some really shitbag DeFi chains, but like there's no US institution that will underwrite BNB swaps. Like no one's touching that shit. No. So it's going to be interesting to see how it unwinds. But the Bitfinex thing's probably one to watch.
Yep. You want to take questions?
Yeah.
I would love if there's if there's BNB supporters in here that could put together like some nice rebuttals to some of this stuff.
Yeah, but he burns it, Trav. He burns it. He burns. They burn the stake that they gifted themselves. That should make the price go up. Oh, also, if you want to launch your own Ponzi on Binance, you have to lock up BNB. That's bullish, right?
Yep.
Maybe I got about 10 more minutes here. I got a dinner with my girlfriend's family, but he just left. Damn it! I was gonna say if Marco Hodis wanted to come up. He's a firecracker. Yeah, maybe I guess I'll add whoever just requested for a question or comment. Oh, cool, Will Foxley too. JP, what's up, man? Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, earlier on, somebody was making reference to the Silicon Valley and the Signature Bank on ramps that were shut down, which is obviously very significant. And then right immediately after that, two other things happened, right? FedNow got rolled out, and then PayPal stable got anointed. So the pieces are falling into place very quickly. It looks like, but it seems like by the end of the year, they're going to have a dump of probably dragging people into court and maybe finally making some rulings, passing some regulations. I see it's a culmination. It's coming to a head. I mean, as you've been saying nonstop, right? CZ is a dead man walking, and Tether is such an oddball. Like you say, they cooperate with the Five Eyes, right? You said that somebody said they shut down 1,000 accounts in the past, so that makes them very useful, right? If you mentioned that they don't show the QSIPs, but if they're actually buying treasuries, the DC is going to love that. So yeah, it could be a psyop too. The whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, in regards to the PayPal US stablecoin, essentially, like Paxos figured out the infrastructure. They had a Binance labeled one. Binance rehypothecated on their own fraud chain, so it was ordered to wind down by the NYDFS. And so, the technical implementation of the Paxos the PayPal stablecoin is pretty shit. I mean, the contract's brutal. But the financial regulation and all that other stuff they had to figure it out. So I mean, I think it was a pretty natural step by PayPal. It wasn't some like grand conspiracy, I don't think.
Yeah.
I mean, and for what it's worth, like Signature and Silvergate, like they did have a little bit of a nudge from Elizabeth Warren, trying to like start a run and whatever. But like just given that they had all of their dollar inflows in 2020 and there was no yield, they had to go into long duration debt. They had to go into like this, that stuff that drew down 30%. And then they have the deposits were not sticky at all. And like again, I'm not like a big stand for like big government or regulators to come in and shut things down, but like they were essentially no KYC. I mean, they had KYC, but like all of these offshore crypto derivative bucket shops were using them to move funds, right? It was like a dollar stable coin that wasn't on a public ledger. So like, yeah, they got shut down or just, had a bank run and blew up. I don't think it was like, the whole choke point thing, I agree, but like, Silicon Valley Bank, why did they fail? Was that choke point or were they just levered to the tits and long duration bonds?
That's total bullshit because by that measure, Charles Schwab and TD Ameritrade is insolvent too.
Well, yeah, they are, but the BTFP fixed that.
Yeah, you got the magic window, right? You put 80 cents in and you get $1 out every day. That's so they Silicon could have limped along that way. That wasn't it. That wasn't it.
Yeah, but no, I mean that's true. If they had the BTFP, Silicon Valley Bank wouldn't have failed. I mean that's factual.
Yeah, I mean half of the CRE regionals are in the same boat now. It's worse now than when it was front page news.
Yeah, no, there's no disagreements there.
The way Signature went down was very odd, right? I mean, it was, you had what's his name that wrote Dodd-Frank, Barney Frank. It's on the board of Signature, talking about this bank was solvent, and they just, the way that went down was quite strange. Silvergate was just kind of tip of the spear of this, duration mismatch situation that
obviously they were going after the fiat rails, obviously. I mean, and then like I said, immediately after that, the FedNow rolled out.
Yeah.
The JPM coin. Also, nobody talks about Diamond's got the JPM coin working internally.
I had a quick question for Travis and Dylan. If you guys remember, like 2018, 2019, the block was basically the people on CZ's ass forever. Like Larry would publish every quarter an update on like the burn rate for Binance, and there was like always back and forth between like that publication and Binance, and it really helped the block get grow. But I just like don't see them talk about Binance anymore, and wonder like if you guys have talked with Larry about that or talk with people from the block about that, because I kind of see like you guys kind of picked up the torch in terms of like carrying on the conversation about Binance, and wonder if there's been like any conversations with like the first people who were kind of tracking down Binance.
I mean,
I haven't paid enough attention to the sort of aggregate coverage that the block has provided on Binance to have a sense of whether or not it seems like they're letting them off easy, so to speak, or not. I don't. I mean, maybe I can just take your word for it. That's what you're saying, Will, right? Is it feels like the block has been sort of like going easy on Binance? Is that what you're saying?
I think they just kind of changed their priorities. I mean, obviously they've had like a crazy year with everything that happened with like their CEO and whatnot. Like Larry used to be just like all over them, right? And then there was like the Shanghai office.
remember that tweet, Will?
Go ahead.
The tweet from CZ when
Classic.
Larry was like,
Oh
basically,
shit! I suggest no more tweets.
Yeah.
That was response to Larry. That's right.
Yeah.
Larry
One of
basically
the
was on,
wildest
he's like,
things he's ever
Yeah.
said for the sake of the
Larry's like,
business. Yeah.
you know, everyone's operating illegally. Binance knows it. You know, they're laundering money that it's technically not allowed, but you know, everybody turns a blind eye. And CZ responds, and it's literally like one of the most
Iconic.
used forms of like, people call it pasta on crypto Twitter, but just like people paste it
Yeah.
whenever someone's reports bad news. Like no more news like this for the sake of our industry. I recommend no more news like this. So it's like, yeah, I mean, there's a conflict of interest, right? Like, is CZ paying the block? I don't know, but like, like FTX was, had an equity stake. Like, there's obviously in crypto media not an incentive to like bash people, especially when they're the biggest players in the ecosystem. Obviously,
Yeah.
and like I'm pretty lucky to have more of like a free reign and just like shoot shit off the hip. And sometimes that leads to business relationships that don't form. Like whatever. I mean, I call a spade, but yeah, I mean, there's obviously a conflict of interest in crypto media because again, like the shitcoin industry, right? People are like, if Binance goes down, it's the end of crypto, and it's like, well, I mean, not really for anything that's like actually has real value and is not just a buck like supported by bucket shop fraud.
That's a complete bullshit take. People that say that.
Have you guys?
That's not.
It's like
Have you guys spoken with Larry or
people
anybody?
that say that are not thinking clearly.
I haven't spoken with Larry, but yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
No shade. That's just like I haven't.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, I wish I could keep going here, but I got a dinner and I'm facing outside chatting. So I'm gonna hop off. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Trav, Will.
Yeah, it was a
Hey,
good one.
Dylan, 1 second before you pop off, just touch on it for a second. The whole thing with Corey and Ripple and that whole mess. What's your take in a nutshell?
My take is, you should self-custody your Bitcoin. It's definitely a mess. It's a hard thing to build your own infrastructure, but it's a valuable thing. So no shade at Swan. It's quite ironic. I'm a fan of what they do. But yeah, I mean, Fortress is the same guys that ran Prime Trust, and they're clearly incompetent. So I wouldn't be holding a lot of funds there. Same with really any custodian. But I can rip on it more later. I gotta go. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Thanks, Rob.
Yeah. Take care. See you guys.